All weekend, I have been dying to talk about this new Diddy docu-series that's out on Netflix right now, and I'm so glad that Taryn Finley was here and Jay Smooth was here to talk about it. And we had a great conversation. I got so much out of their insights on this. But what I want you to pay attention to is this very specific part where Taryn is sort of reacting. Taryn and Jay are both reacting to what the jurors had to say. Because one of the shocking things about the documentary is that it manages to get two people who were on the jury for the Diddy trial. And they talk perhaps more openly than you'd imagine they would. And it's incredibly revealing. I think Jay uses the word
damning
in his analysis of what they had to say. And I just got so much out of that part of the conversation. I hope you get so much out of this conversation as well. Onto it. Taryn Finley's here. Jay Smooth is here. They've both seen this Diddy docuseries. Hello, both of you.
Hey, how you doing?
Nice to have you here. Listen, before we get to this conversation, I just want to give people a heads up that this conversation will include references to sexual assault, so use your discretion while you're listening. Taryn, I'll start with you on this one. It was announced that 50 Cent would be sort of executive producing this documentary. There's a lot of buzz about that sort of element of the story, but then there's also some concern, I think, some concern that 50 might not handle this story sensitively. And then you get this documentary. I should say, concern including on this podcast. I was among those people who was like, is 50 Cent the right person to handle this story? And then we get the documentary. Now that you've seen it, do you feel like 50 has been maybe underestimated?
Elamin, you and I both, I definitely did not expect this from 50 Cent. Of course, we know him from his various shows within the Powerverse, and we know him from just being a petty person. He's always involved in beef, and his beef with Diddy is well documented. So I don't blame anyone for not taking this news seriously when we first heard about this documentary, but I have to say that Curtis did the damn thing with this. I mean, he put on his EP hat and used his connections and resources to help create, like you said, a really comprehensive documentary. And I have to give a special shout out to Alex Stapleton, who, she, of course, is behind Reggie and Shut Up and Dribble and so many other really well done, well researched documentaries.
She directed this one. Yeah.
Yes. And so obviously, it is something that so many people have been talking about over the weekend.
Yeah. I will just look for a moment straight directly to camera and say, Curtis Jackson, this show underestimated you, and my apologies. I think we owe you an apology for that because this documentary really did deliver. It truly did the damn thing. There is a lot of research here. There's a lot of care here. And there's also a lot of threads that maybe have been previously unconnected before. And so, Jay, let me turn to you because I think people maybe expected, because of the trolling persona, shall we say, of 50 Cent online, people expected this documentary to have maybe a salacious kind of tone, usually the salacious tone that we get from celebrity documentaries. It didn't have that. For people who have not seen it, what makes this documentary different, you think, Jay?
Yeah, I was one of those as well who was very skeptical about this coming into it. I mean, 50, on top of everything you and Taryn said, he has his own long history of misogyny, and he's the same person who ridiculed Terry Crews for coming out with his story of assault back at that time. And I still don't have any illusion that he's become some great principled ally of the people or anything, but I am glad in this case that it seems like his self-interest aligned with getting this out in the world and stepping out of the way so that the documentarian Alex Stapleton could do some really good work in this instance, I think.
Yeah.
Not in terms of any particular entirely new revelations, so much as really in an unsentimental, clear way laying out the patterns of abuse and dominance that so easily go along with this insatiable thirst for money and power that we see playing out over and over through Puffy's life. I think it really gives a lot of clear insight into that.
Taryn, I gotta say, I kept gasping as I was watching this entire documentary, but the first gasp came literally in the first shot because the whole documentary opens with this unbelievably intimate footage of Diddy, and he's speaking with his lawyers, and it's just days before he's about to get sentenced, and you get him sort of all kind of riled up and yelling at them, and you kind of go, how did they even get this footage? We also get some pretty damning revelations from a lot of people who were incredibly close to Diddy, and then also some reframing of some significant 90s moments of hip hop without spoiling, I guess, too much. But let me ask you, what parts of the documentary stuck out for you?
Absolutely. A few things. I mean, my jaw was absolutely on the floor with that first shot, and we're seeing him discussing his legal strategy with his lawyers. And it's like, how did y'all get this? Oh, he didn't pay the cameraman just like he didn't pay so many other of the
Yes.
folks that we see as we're watching this
Yeah.
documentary. But also, two other things. Obviously, Diddy is, according to this documentary, at the center of the East Coast West Coast beef that led to the murders of Pac and Diddy. This is something that we've heard rumors of and have seen other documentaries and other pieces of media explore. But the way that this documentary lays it out really does feel especially damning,
Mm.
and it'll be interesting when we do see next year that court case play out. And lastly, and one of the biggest revelations was Aubrey O'Day reading the affidavit in which a witness testified that, or a witness wrote in the affidavit that she saw Diddy and another man essentially raping
Aubrey
O'Day
O'Day. Yeah.
while she is very inebriated, quote unquote. And that was something that Aubrey didn't even know about until just this past year. So she talks about grappling with that. She talks about
Yeah.
how she's been able to, or not able to, really process this information and what that means for other victims and other survivors of Diddy's alleged abuse. And that was just something that really has stuck with me, and is unfortunately a big revelation that I think we all, kind of need to continue to pay
Yeah.
attention to.
I'm glad you brought up the Aubrey O'Day moment because it is one of those moments where you have to like sort of pause the documentary for a second. So Aubrey O'Day was one of the singers in Danity Kane, who were one of the bands sort of signed to Diddy's label. And I just want to play a clip from the documentary. Here's Aubrey O'Day reading the alleged emails sent to her from Diddy.
Here's one email. I don't want to just you. I want to turn you out. I'm gonna finish watching this porn and finish masturbating. I'll think of you, happy face. If you change your mind and get ready to do what I say, hit me, happy face. God bless Diddy. God is the greatest. What happens in real life to anyone else? Your boss gets fired. 6 months later, I was fired.
So Aubrey O'Day sort of laying out an email that she received from Diddy, and then she says that she was fired 6 months later from the band. And then you get that moment later from this affidavit of somebody else who isn't Aubrey, who says, here's the thing that I saw. Taryn, what was your reaction to that moment, to seeing Aubrey O'Day read that on camera and sort of seeing her get emotional as she kind of describes what she went through?
It was truly heartbreaking. I
Mm.
also had to, kind of take a step back and look at all of the kind of religious cues that we saw within this. Diddy had a God complex. He thought he was the second coming. He believed he was above reproach because he thought he was Jesus Christ's brother.
Hmm.
And that man put himself, going back to another scene in the documentary, he put himself in Nas's Hate Me Now video on a cross as if he was being crucified.
Yeah.
And after Hezekiah Walker kind of checked him about it, he went back and beat up Steve Stout to get him to take it down in the name of God. Like, this is just a pattern that we see where Diddy believes that he is above everyone else. He believes he is godlike, and because of that, he was able to take advantage of so many people.
Okay, first of all, let me just pull in Alex Stapleton here and say allegedly, right? Like
Allegedly.
the story is sort of a little bit careful in that moment to say the Steve Stout moment, because Diddy wanted the video taken down and Steve Stout was reluctant to do so, and then the documentary does sort of allege that Diddy had that taken care of, and then after that, Steve Stout and Diddy settled at a court. So that's the story as is told in the documentary. Jay, in terms of when you watch this documentary, what's the thing that sticks out for you that you go, whoa, I've maybe thought about these things, I've heard about these things, but I've not seen them connected in this way before?
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, so much about his prolific abuse of women in his personal and professional life, like that Aubrey O'Day moment. And then other things like his childhood friend and business partner, Kirk Burroughs, I think gives a lot of poignant testimony to
Yeah.
how he saw Diddy's character evolve and be revealed through things like how cynical and exploitative he was around the killing of Biggie Smalls, which I'm glad sets me free to say "I'll Be Missing You" is always a terrible song, by the way. But there's a moment towards the end where Kirk Burroughs is looking back on all the dark chapters he rationalized at the time, and he says, "But was I a member of the Diddy cult? Was I the first member of the Diddy
Hmm.
cult?" And
Yeah.
I think that's really poignant as a moment of someone grappling with their complicity, which I think is a
Yeah.
question that could be dug a lot deeper into as we move on.
I will say I yelled at my television. Like I paused to yell at my television when, Kirk Burroughs was sort of explaining that Diddy was like, Biggie will have one of the biggest funerals in New York has ever had. And also is going to come out of Biggie's account, with the label. And it's kind of juxtaposed all these clips of Diddy saying he was my best friend. He meant everything to me. And then the idea that he would make sort of the Biggie estate pay for that. It felt, shall we say, discordant. I think that's maybe the easy word to say out here. This doc also features a lot of interviews, a couple interviews with two of the jurors from Diddy's trial earlier this year. You see the harrowing video of Diddy assaulting Cassie in a hotel lobby. That was part of the evidence that the jury saw. And I want you guys to just here's one of the jurors explaining why that video was not the smoking gun that some people might have thought it would be.
He's beating her, next minute they're going on dinners and trips. It's like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you don't like something, you completely get out. You cannot have both ways. Have the luxury and then complain about it. I don't think so.
So, Jay, that is Juror 75. He's basically saying Cassie can't have it both ways. You can't she can't go have all the luxury life with Diddy, but also say and complain about the life. I should also say that the other juror interviewed for this doc made it clear that Diddy's actions in that video were unforgivable, but it was not relevant to the trial because he wasn't being tried for domestic assault. All that said, what do you make of the jurors and what they said in that clip that we just heard, Jay?
Oh, goodness. There is
Yeah.
a lot to say about those jurors. And the woman, Juror 160, is catching a lot of heat on the internet right
She is.
now. Deservedly so, I think, for just how flippant she is about all of the accusations and dismissive of the survivors telling their story because they were too emotional and seeming to have quite a bit of parasocial investment in Diddy as much as she denies it. But I do think that older gentleman on the jury is every bit as damning with that complete misunderstanding of how the cycle of abuse works. And it goes to show how what we call a jury of your peers may not necessarily be anyone you want to have around. And I do, one thing I wish that the documentary did a bit more of is have people who could speak with expertise for the audience about how abuse works, how coercive control works, because there are probably a lot of people sitting at home who aren't too far away from that older gentleman in the jury who has these 1950s ideas of how these things work.
That's a useful way to think about it, I think, Taryn. Like this idea of like if you're going to put these jurors in the documentary, would it have been helpful to sort of say, okay, here's also some expert testimony or an expert who can say this is why some people might think of these situations like this sometimes. But what about you? Do you think there's anything that this documentary may have missed or could have done a little bit better?
Absolutely. I mean, this was, if nothing else, this was a documentary about the rise of Diddy's alleged evil, right?
Hmm.
This was not a documentary that was meant to, at least I didn't see it as a documentary that was meant to serve justice to those who, have accused Diddy of these allegations and of these things that he was on trial for or
Yeah.
not on trial for. And I think that was the biggest thing that was missing, right? It didn't take, the surviving R. Kelly approach of censoring the victims. Diddy was at the center of this still, while the victims, the survivors, those who have these stories about Diddy and the alleged harms that he bestowed upon them,
Hmm.
they were still kind of on the sidelines.
Yeah. I think like this documentary has towards the closing moments, you get a lot of people who are in tears, who are sort of expressing what they really think about Diddy, but also they're terrified, and they talk about their fear for the future, about how they've held this fear for years and years and years, and this fear is going to stay with them now that they've spoken, to a documentary camera about it. And that's going to stay with me, I think. I don't think this story sort of resolves here. But in the meantime, I got to leave it here with the two of you. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. Jay Smooth is a veteran hip-hop broadcaster and culture critic based in New York. And Taryn Finley is a journalist with the Refinery 29 who also covers Sean Combs' trial in New York City. This new documentary, Sean Combs' The Reckoning, is streaming now on Netflix.